Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Norway, a diver's heat dies at 70 meters, and the way out is 52 minutes of stops she cannot skip. In India, a lamp fails 2 kilometers inside the longest cave in the country, and the spare is lying 2 hours behind him. And in Yorkshire, a storm breaks the dam above a 100-meter shaft while a caver is still hanging on the rope. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On February 8, 2026, Carrie Lindquist walked down through snow to a black pool in the Nordland Marble and into PLURA, the deepest and coldest flooded cave system in Norway, an Arctic Circle labyrinth where the water sits at 4 degrees and never changes, all year, forever. She was doing a survey dive with 2 partners, 70 meters down the line to the far side of a sump, 20 minutes on the bottom, and out on a plan that ended in 40 minutes of decompression. Carrie was 36 years old, a technical diver who had logged 400 cold water cave dives across 11 years, the one Norwegian teams called when the water went below 5 degrees. Her habit was 2 of everything that made heat. 2 battery packs for the drysuit heater, 2 sets of thick gloves, because cold, she taught her students, is not an emergency until it is the only emergency. The plan called for 70 meters, 20 minutes of bottom time, and a hard turn at 120 bar. Here is what you need to understand about 4-degree water. A heated dry suit is not a comfort, it is life support, and the gas in a diver's tanks gets colder the deeper it goes. A diver who loses heat at 70 meters cannot simply leave. The decompression schedule is a wall. Coming up fast enough to get warm is the one thing guaranteed to kill you. The dive ran beautifully for 18 minutes. 3 lights moving down white marble, regulators hissing with each breath, the line running true, tanks clinking and scraping against the rock, the survey slate filling up with numbers nobody had written before. At 70 meters, Carrie checked her gauges, checked her partners, and felt the warmth across her chest stop. She had 200 bar, 18 minutes of bottom time behind her, and a body that had just started losing heat to water cold enough to finish her in 90 minutes. 19 minutes in, that is when the heat left her. The primary battery had already failed at depth because its contacts had iced inside a connector that only ever got tested in the warm of the dive shop. She switched to the backup and felt nothing at all come back. What she didn't know, hanging at 70 meters in 4-degree water, both packs shared the same iced connector, so the redundancy had never existed. And that habit would now decide the dive. 2 of everything that made heat, and neither of them working. The warmth stopped. The backup did nothing. Panic came in cold. She was 70 meters down. The ceiling was 40 minutes of decompression. Because this is the arithmetic of cold at depth. A diver loses core temperature in 4-degree water in about 90 minutes, and her ascent, done correctly, would take 52. 1 diver with no heat. 52 minutes of mandatory stops between her and the air, and a shivering clock that had already started. Watch the cold water diver spend the only currency she had left, which was calm. First, signal both partners and start up immediately, banking every minute at the shallow end. Second, curl the fingers into fists inside the gloves, because a hand that cannot hold a line is worth less than a hand that cannot feel. Put yourself on that line for 1 minute of it. Water cold enough to burn. A shiver you cannot stop building in your back. And a computer telling you that leaving early is the one decision that kills you. Her partners closed in on either side and pressed against her through the whole ascent, giving her the only heat left in the cave, which was theirs. At 21 meters, the shivering turned violent enough that she clipped herself to the line so a blackout would not drop her into the sump. 19 minutes of stops remained above her, and the cold had been working on her for 33. She held every stop the computer asked for. 52 minutes. Not one of them cut short. Her head came out of the black pool into falling snow, the surface water dripping loud off her hood, and the 2 of them hauled her up the rock by the harness, still clipped together. She was in a heated tent 9 minutes later at 33 degrees core temperature, awake, angry, and alive. Her partners had given her 52 minutes of their own body heat, and lost 3 degrees each doing it. Carrie survived on 52 minutes of discipline and 2 friends who would not let go. And the team's report ruled the incident a redundancy failure that had already failed before the water. Both heater packs ran through one connector, and one iced connector is not 2 systems. The deepest flooded caves in Norway still hold water at 4 degrees that never warms in any season, and still take about 90 minutes to empty the heat out of a person. Carrie dives them every winter, and now runs her 2 heater packs on 2 separate connectors, tested cold, in a bucket of ice the night before. Cold is not an emergency until it is the only emergency, she tells her students at the edge of the black pool. Carry 2 of everything that makes heat, and make sure they are actually 2. On January 12, 2026, Rohan Mehta walked out of the Meghalaya sun and into the cold dark of Krem Liat Prah, the longest cave in India, 34 kilometers of sandstone passage running under the hills like a second country. He was pushing survey with one partner, 2 kilometers in along the main trunk, 4 hours of measuring, and out before the dry season light went. Rohan was 39 years old, a survey caver who had logged 14 Meghalaya expeditions across 17 years, the one who knew the trunk passage better than the map did. His habit was counting. Every junction he passed got a number spoken out loud and a knot tied in a length of cord at his waist. Because a cave, he told the students, will take your eyes long before it takes your life. The plan called for 4 hours underground, 2 lamps each, and a turnaround at the 4th side passage. Here is what you need to understand about total darkness underground. It is not like a dark room, where the eyes adjust after a minute and shapes come back. There is no light to adjust to. The eyes stay open and give you nothing, hour after hour, and the brain starts offering you shapes that are not there. 2 kilometers in, a caver without a lamp is a blind man in a maze that does not care. The push went well for 3 hours. Boots scraping on dry sandstone, water dripping somewhere off to the left, the tape running out and reeling back with a click, the cord at his waist collecting knots, both of them talking easily in a passage the size of a railway tunnel. At the 4th side passage, they turned for home exactly on schedule, 3 hours in, 2 kilometers deep, 11 junctions behind them, and Rohan's primary lamp went out between one step and the next, and the dark closed over him like water. 2 kilometers from daylight, that is when the light left him. The primary had already failed hours earlier without telling him, because its battery housing cracked on the crawl in, and cave grit worked steadily into the contacts. He reached for the backup on his helmet and found the bracket empty. What he didn't know, standing blind in a trunk passage, the spare had shaken loose in the same crawl and was lying 2 hours behind him. And that habit would now be the only map he had. A number spoken at every junction, a knot in a cord, and a man who counted out loud. The lamp died. The bracket was empty. Panic went through him fast. He could not see his hands. 2 kilometers of maze stood between him and the sun. Because this is the arithmetic of a blind caver. His partner had 1 working lamp for 2 people, and a shared light in a sandstone maze halves everyone's speed and doubles everyone's chance of a wrong turn. 2 cavers, 1 lamp, 2 kilometers of passage, and 11 junctions between them and the entrance, each one identical to the touch. Within 20 minutes, the shared beam had them walking at half speed, and a 4-hour trip out had quietly become a 7-hour one. Watch the counter use the only thing the dark could not take. First, stand still and say the number of the junction out loud, which was 11. Second, put a hand on his partner's shoulder and keep it there, so 2 people moved as 1 animal instead of 2. 9 junctions still stood between them and the entrance, and the working lamp had already been burning for 6 hours. At junction 7, the cord snagged, and a knot pulled through his fingers before he could count it, and he stood still for a full minute rebuilding the number out loud from memory. Put yourself in that passage for 1 minute of it. Eyes open, giving you nothing. A wall under your palm that feels like every other wall. and a number in your mouth that is the only thing standing between you and a maze that goes on for 34 kilometers. They walked it out one junction at a time, Rohan calling each number down from 11 and untying a knot from the cord at his waist as they passed it. At junction 9, the passage narrowed and they had to break contact to crawl. And for 90 seconds, Rohan moved through the sandstone with nothing to touch but rock. At junction 4, the second lamp began to yellow, and neither of them said anything about it at all. 4 junctions left, 1 dying light, and 900 meters of sandstone still to walk.
At junction 3, they lost 11 minutes to a side passage that felt right under the hand and was not, and Rohan made his partner walk them back to the knot before he would let either of them guess again. 5 hours after the primary died, Rohan untied the last knot and felt warm air on his face before he saw anything. The entrance came up as a gray smear, then a shape, then the hills of Meghalaya in late afternoon light. He had been underground for 9 hours and blind for 5 of them. He sat down in the grass outside, put both hands flat on the ground, and counted to 11 out loud one more time. Rohan survived on 11 numbers, 1 shared lamp, and 5 hours of walking out 2 kilometers, and the expedition's report ruled it a lighting failure that had already failed on the way in, with 0 repeats in the 4 expeditions since. Helmet-mounted spares now get a captive tether, and every caver carries a 3rd light in a sealed pocket that is never opened underground. The longest cave in India still runs 34 kilometers under the Meghalaya hills, and still gives a caver without a lamp nothing at all to look at. Rohan surveys it every dry season, and still counts every junction out loud, even with 3 lights burning. A cave will take your eyes long before it takes your life, he tells the students at the entrance. So carry a map that does not need them. 11 junctions, 5 hours blind. Say the number, tie the knot. On November 3rd, 2026, Alice Fenwick clipped onto a rope in the wet grass of Ingleborough and started down Gaping Gill, the deepest single free-hanging shaft in England, 100 meters of Yorkshire limestone dropping into the largest underground chamber in Britain, big enough to hold a cathedral with room left over. She was going down with 3 club members, a straightforward descent of the main shaft, 2 hours in the chamber, and back up the same rope before dark. Alice was 33 years old, a club caver who had logged 200 trips across 8 years, the one who always carried the group's spare rope because nobody else wanted the weight. Her habit was the sky. Before every pitch, she stopped at the entrance and read the weather out loud to the group, because a shaft in Yorkshire, she said, is a drain with people in it. The plan gave them 4 hours underground, under a forecast of scattered cloud and a 2% chance of rain. Here is what you need to understand about Gaping Gill. The main shaft takes an entire moorland stream down it, and cavers only descend when that stream has been dammed and diverted at the surface. The dam is a low wall of stones and boards. It holds against ordinary weather. It does not hold against a moor that takes 40 millimeters of rain in 90 minutes, and when it goes, everything upstream arrives at once. The descent went perfectly. 4 cavers dropping one at a time down 100 meters of free air, carabiners clicking home at each rebelay, boots scraping the wall, the chamber opening below them like a cathedral with a stream drumming somewhere out of sight. They spent 90 minutes in the great chamber, and at the 2-hour mark, Alice sent the others up first and clipped on last, the way she always did. 2 hours in, 100 meters down, 4 people on one rope route, and on the moor above them, the dam had already failed, because a storm cell nobody had forecast was dropping 40 millimeters of rain onto Ingleborough while they stood in the chamber. 40 meters up the rope, that is when the moor let go. A storm cell had already parked over Ingleborough while they were underground, and the diversion dam had been failing for 20 minutes before any of them knew the sky had changed. The first she knew of it was a sound above her like a train arriving. What she didn't know, hanging 40 meters up a 100-meter shaft, the entire moorland stream was coming down the rope route on top of her, and that habit would have saved her if the sky had done what it said. A woman who read the weather out loud, under a forecast that was simply wrong. The water came. It came all at once. Panic arrived with it. She was on the rope. There was nowhere on that rope to go. Because this is the arithmetic of a flooded shaft. A caver on ascenders climbs about 10 meters a minute in good conditions, and a full moorland stream falling 100 meters does not care about good conditions. One caver, 40 meters up. 60 meters of shaft still above her, and a column of water heavy enough to drive the breath out of a person who cannot turn her face away from it. Watch her do the right thing in the wrong place. First, get out of the fall line, swinging hard for the wall in the dry side of the shaft. Second, clip a cow stale to the nearest rebelay so the rope could not swing her back under the column. Third, put her head down into her own chest and keep climbing. You cannot outclimb water in a shaft, and she knew it, and she climbed anyway. Put yourself on that rope for 1 minute of it. Water hitting hard enough to bruise, cold that arrives in seconds, and 60 meters of climbing left, in a shaft that has become a waterfall with a person inside it. She made 11 meters in the first 4 minutes, which was extraordinary, and the 3 above her heard her shouting and could do nothing at all. At 51 meters, the cold took her hands, and a caver whose hands will not close cannot work an ascender. The club had her out of the shaft 2 hours later, when the dam was rebuilt and the water dropped, still clipped to her cow stale at the rebelay where she had stopped. The cave rescue team said she had done everything right, and that the water had simply been bigger than a person. You can do everything right at 51 meters and still lose, if the sky lies to you.
Alice Fenwick died of cold and drowning on a rope in the largest underground chamber in Britain, 51 meters below a moor that had been dry when she walked onto it. The 3 she sent up ahead of her all lived. She had carried the spare rope down as usual, and it was still on her back. The inquest ruled the death misadventure following a dam failure in an unforecast storm, and the club changed its rule that season. A watcher stays on the surface with the dam and a radio for every descent, and nobody goes down the main shaft on a forecast younger than 3 hours. The deepest free-hanging shaft in England still takes the whole moorland stream when the dam gives way, and still drops 100 meters onto whoever is beneath it. The club descends it every summer with a watcher on the surface now, and her name is on the winch shed above the 100 meters that killed her. A shaft in Yorkshire is a drain with people in it, Alice used to say in the wet grass at the top. Read the sky before you clip on, then leave somebody up there to keep reading it.